Alright, so we're going to continue on with the rest of our skeleton. So the last video was on the axial skeleton. This video is going to cover your appendicular skeleton. And so the axial was comprised of 80 bones, and then the appendicular is going to be the remaining 126 bones, so for a total of 206. And you can see that the appendicular skeleton consists of the upper limbs, which are going to be your arms and your wrists and your hands, the pectoral girdle, which is the area that connects the arms to that axial skeleton, which is going to be your clavicle and your scapula. We have the lower limbs, which are going to be our legs, our ankles, and our toes. And then we're going to have our pelvic girdle, which is going to connect our legs to our axial skeleton. And so in the upper limbs, you're going to find that the upper limbs and the lower limbs kind of have the same basic format. They're going to have one big bone in the upper region. They're going to have two bones in like the forearm and the lower leg. You're going to have your wrist bones. You're going to have the bones in the middle of your hand. And then you're going to have your phalanges. And so we'll see something very similar in the legs. So for the arm, you have the humerus, which is the big bone in your upper arm, and then the radius and the ulna in the lower forearm. Then you have your carpals, which are going to be your wrist bones, and there's actually 8 in each wrist. Now this is something that we did not have to know in lab. We did not have to know the names of all 8 of these bones, but you can see that technically they each have their own name, okay? Then you have the metacarpals, which are the bones in the hand, and then you have your phalanges that make up your fingers. And then the girdles that attach your arms and your legs to the axial skeleton, the pectoral girdle, is going to be in your shoulder area. It's going to consist of the scapula, which is what we commonly call our shoulder blade, as well as the clavicle, which we commonly call our collarbone. And then your pelvic girdle is going to consist of 2 coxal bones, okay, that we commonly refer to as hip bones, but they're called coxal bones, and they're kind of made up of other bones that are fused together. And then in the lower limbs, like I said, they're going to kind of mirror the arms, in that you have one big bone in the thigh area. That's going to be your femur. You have 2 bones in the lower portion of the leg, the tibia and the fibula. You're going to have ankle bones. This time there's going to be 7 in each ankle instead of 8 like we saw in the wrist, but we do see that they have their own names, just like we saw before, including this big calcaneus or heel bone. And then we have our phalanges, which are going to be the bones in our toes, and they're of course going to be connected to those metatarsals, which are going to be the longer bones in the middle of our foot. And then we have an additional bone, that sesamoid bone that we talked about before. We have the patella, or the knee bone. And so indicate which of the following bones belong to the axial skeleton and which belong to the appendicular skeleton. All right, so hyoid bone, that's going to be axial. Patella, or knee, is going to be appendicular. Clavicle, that's part of one of your girdles, the pectoral girdle, so that's going to be appendicular. Ethmoid is up in the skull. That's one of our cranial bones, and so that's going to be axial. And then tarsal bones are going to be ankles, so that's going to be appendicular. All right, and that's going to take us to our Chapter 9 material, and we will pick back up in our next video with Chapter 9.